Hey folks, Brian here, the Coastal Patrol Cub. I'm back here at Ace Flight Solutions in Louisa County, Virginia, and we are here today to pull the wings off the Cub, crate it up, and put it on a trailer heading home. So in this video, I'm going to record some of what we're doing for the process here, and then later on I will explain what we're doing and why. So follow along. Okay, so why are we pulling the wings on the Cub? Well, I'll link back to my previous video. If you didn't see that, the quick recap is on the annual, they found several cracked wing ribs that needed to be repaired. Now, they could have repaired them. That was absolutely something that the shop would have been able to do. However, what it would have involved would have been cutting into the fabric, going in and repairing those ribs, and then patching the fabric back up. I had already been planning, as soon as I bought the airplane 2 years ago, to do a full restoration of it in the next couple of years. Given that, the decision then became, well, do I fix this up now just to turn around in a couple of years and redo everything? So do I worry about paying for repairing fabric, repairing wings, and then, maybe 2 years down the line, tear that same fabric off entirely, replace those ribs entirely, just to redo it? And so for me, I decided that, you know what, we're going to go ahead and just not worry about repairing these right now. Let's pull the wings off. I'll take it back to my home hangar and we will just start the restoration sooner rather than later. Even with that, I might not do the full restoration right now. It is entirely possible for me to just do the restoration of the wings, put everything else back the way it was for right now, finish the rest of the restoration later. It'll look a little funky because the wings will be looking brand new and the rest of the airplane definitely won't, but it is certainly an option to get me back airborne sooner rather than later and then stick to my original timeline for the rest of the restoration. But that is ultimately the decision we came to. Might not have been the right decision for someone else in the same boat, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. So, if you're in the comments saying, oh man, I would have just repaired it, or, oh man, do the full restoration now, whatever. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of opinions, but at the end of the day, this is what I decided what was right for me. Again, the shop absolutely could have repaired it, but it was more a decision of, they give a range of, hey, this is about how much we expect it to cost, assuming we don't find anything else, right? But they've already found things that we weren't expecting to find. So the more they dig into it, the higher the likelihood goes of something else being found. And at the end of the day, I didn't want to risk spending a bunch of money on this annual that I felt would have been better spent towards the restoration. So for obviously much less money, we put in the work to go ahead and pull the wings, trailer it back to my home airport, and then I can start in on the restoration now. So that is what we decided to do. All right, so we're just about ready to pull the wings, have the jury struts removed here, have the nuts removed from all of the bolts that hold the struts on, as well as the spars. So once we have hands in place to support everything, we'll knock the bolts out and lift everything off. I've got all my lumber ready to support the wings. So this side, got a couple of U-bolts that'll be attaching where the struts attach and cinch down on there. And then on this side, these two pieces are going to sandwich the wing spars with the carriage bolts in there and squeeze that together. And then I'll frame it up from there. So kind of neat. You can see in here, up there are the front spar attach bolts. Then the rears are back here. So it is literally 2 bolts per wing holding the spars to the fuselage. And then of course 2 bolts on the bottom of the struts and 2 bolts up there. So really only 4 bolts on the wing total holding that whole thing on. So yeah, I'm just about ready to go ahead and pull this. So here's a time lapse of us actually removing the wings. Again, at this point, everything had already been prepped. We had removed all the cotter pins for the various nuts, disconnected the aileron cables, that sort of thing. So all we're doing at this point is going through and finally removing the nuts, knocking out the bolts, pulling the struts, and then pulling the wings themselves. The left wing took us a little bit longer because we're kind of getting this, the hang of the process there. And then the right wing went super quickly. And you can see there, I've already got the lumber laid out that's going to form the initial parts of the crating for the wings. So the obviously multi-person job, you could probably do it with only 2 people, but having 4 definitely helped. Overall went super quick and easy. Okay, so we've got everything back at the hangar now. So I just wanted to kind of go over a couple of different things. So this is the next day, actually 2 days later, sorry. Got everything here at my home hangar, all the parts over here. So a couple of things I wanted to point out. So number one, really happy with Ace Flight Solutions in terms of everything that they pulled off. They've got very nicely tagged. You can see some parts set in there with the tail number, serial number, and exactly where that part came from. So especially when it comes to things like ailerons and cables, you know, they marked the ends of the cables of exactly where they went and that sort of thing, left, right, what have you. So in terms of when everything starts going back together, hopefully should be really clear. One of the things that I'm going to do, so I have a fair amount of shelves here at the hangar. I might do some more now with what we've got planned. I might want to add in some shelves to really have places to store in an organized fashion all the parts while everything is apart. I'm going to be implementing a pretty robust, hopefully, inventory control system so that when I need to find a part, I know where to get it, and in terms of where it is on the shelf, et cetera. Just try and keep things as organized as possible, because I know I would like to get this project done really quickly. However, I work full time. This is going to be a part-time as I have time thing. Things are going to be coming here from the hangar to my home where I'm going to be doing some work and back again, all that sort of thing. So long story short, I'm going to have basically a spreadsheet that's going to have every part is going to have an entry on exactly where that part lives when it's not on the airplane. So job number one for me is to get what's already here organized and start off on the right foot with that, and not be coming back weeks and months later trying to go, oh, right, where did this come from? Where is this part? You know, what have you. So again, I'm going to be working on that first and foremost. I've got some stuff here on the shelves that's just general stuff for my house that I'm just using the hangar as storage. So some of that I might get a storage unit or something and get that elsewhere and focus on the stuff here being specifically airplane stuff. So that is the first thing I wanted to talk about. Is, again, I've got a lot of stuff to get through and organized, and that is going to be step one. So I wanted to talk briefly about that. Second thing I want to talk about here was the wing jig. So kind of came up with this not entirely on my own, but I found the idea of what I went with based on people who have transported wings in like a box truck. And I took that idea and kind of modified it. And I will be the first one to say I kind of goofed up in a couple of ways. So I wanted to point out, I think this can be a really good and robust way to transport wings, specifically for the Cub. So if y'all are looking for some ideas, I want to show you what I did and show you what I did wrong and what I would do differently in the future. And some of it I had planned to do, and unfortunately goofed up on some things. So I'll talk to that. So first things first, I'll show you these 2x4s across here. You've got the wing strut attachment points, and this is just a 2x4 measured and drilled out for U-bolts. And then after we took the struts off, I'll see if I can get a good shot in there. So you got the original strut attachment bolt going through that U-bolt there and then cinched up there. Gives you a good attachment point. These 2x4s are 6 feet long, which gives you a little bit on either side of the wing. That actually worked out really well. And then on this side, I've got two 2x4s with, I believe these are 12-inch carriage bolts through that sandwich the wing spars front and back. Now, here's where I goofed. You'll see here that this is out from the wing a little bit. Originally, when I crated these all up, these 2x4s were up against the wing. What I did, I put everything together, the wings together all in this one assembly. And my original plan was to have 2x4s going lengthwise this way as well. Where I goofed is I looked up some measurements for the wing spars because I didn't have the airplane sitting in front of me, and trying to figure out how far it was from the wing root to the strut attachment point, and I dorked up my measurements. So I did not end up having 2x4s long enough to go across here. as I had originally planned. What I did instead was I put ratchet straps across from one end to the other on that side, on the rear of the wings, because you can see here the rear spar only sticks out a few inches, right? The front spar sticks out significantly longer, and my dumb brain said, yeah, that should be fine. And I didn't do straps across these two. That was a mistake. I was expecting these to be gripping strong enough, because they are clamped down pretty tight, that these weren't going to walk on me. And they did. And because they walked on the front, we also got a gap on the back here, and it almost was a problem. The good news was it was a very short drive. I didn't go very far. Everything worked out okay, but it could have been disastrous. If these things had walked entirely off, whatever, could have been a huge problem. That being said, this system can work. So what I would do differently if I did it again is you're going to need, it's a little over 10 feet. I would say if you got some 12-foot 2x4s, or, you could do it with ratchet straps as long as you actually did it. And I would go diagonally. So I would go across straight, and I would also do a diagonal here. And truthfully, what I would probably do next time is I might put a little bit more space between the wings, so I could more easily do a diagonal here as well. And if you really, really wanted to do it, I probably wouldn't do this with lumber. I would just, if you have lumber to do all the other diagonals, I would just do ratchet straps diagonally across here as well. So just really triangulate the whole thing much better than what I did. And that will save you. Now, you might be wondering why I have these 2x4s are so long here. That is really just because I plan on reusing this lumber for a different project at home later after I uncrate the wings. So I was like, I don't need to cut those. So I'm not, because that will save me those 8-foot 2x4s, which I will need later. So that's the only reason that's like that is. So anyway, so again, what I did can work, and I think it can work really, really well and get you to the point where if you needed to transport these wings a long distance, you could do so very safely. It just didn't go so well for me because I'm dumb. So don't be dumb. Don't be like me. But it was also, in my own defense, not that it, whatever, but some things took a little bit longer than they planned the other day, and I was kind of under the gun for time to get the wings back to the hangar so I could run back and get the airplane itself before they closed. So that kind of get home-itis, right? And it led me to rush on some things. And again, I had plenty of tie-down straps. I could have gone tie-down straps across here, and then it would have been fine. It would have been totally fine for the distance I had to drive. No worries at all. I just didn't do that. So that was me being dumb. If I had done that for a 30-minute drive, would have been totally fine. If you're looking to go for a longer distance, cross-country move or whatever, then, the diagonals. But the other thing was I was moving the wings and the airplane separately. If I were moving the wings with the airplane, I would have done things a little bit differently too. The wings would have had to have gone vertical on the trailer. And so that would have impacted the overall design of the crates. But the general concept of hooking onto the wing strut attachment points and then sandwiching the spars, I think is 100% a valid way to go. I think it'd work just fine. Just don't be stupid. That's really the advice I got for you there. So that is where that is. The last thing I want to point out in this video is the fabric. I talked a little bit about it in the last video, so I was going to talk about it more. Once upon a time, when these airplanes were first built, they were cotton covered, right? Cotton and dope. And let's face it, that's just how airplanes were at the time, and they weren't always hangared and all these other things. Nowadays, you get a fabric covered airplane, very few people risk parking a fabric covered airplane outside, right? So most of the time they're hangared and they're kept really nicely. Back in the day, cotton covered, might sit outside, whatever. The point being, you would only get maybe 8, maybe 10 years, if you were lucky, out of that fabric before the fabric had to be replaced and was no good anymore, right? And what that meant is every 8 to 10 years, you were also getting a really good look at the airplane structure. That is no longer the case. These modern fabric systems last so long. Now, this fabric is 41 years old now and is in honestly great shape, right? As far as the fabric itself is solid. But that means the airplane structure has been sitting for 40 years without a good, solid look at everything, right? And so I am fully expecting when we pull the fabric off that we're going to find other things wrong. We're going to find things that need to be repaired. And this airplane was hangared since it's been restored, right? It's been kept in pretty good shape. So I will say, when I first got this airplane, there are differing schools of thought of this. Some people say you should recover the airplane every 20 years or so, just for that fact alone. The fabric will still be in great shape, but you want to get a look at the structure underneath. I was not of that mind prior to this. Now I am kind of more on the fence. Still not sure what happened with the ribs. I have some theories, but you know, it's just guesswork at this point, so I won't even go into it. The point being, this fabric is in really good shape, but it is 40 years old. But what was interesting to me, and I've seen a little bit of this prior, but it really jumped out, is you can see it here on the wing root. It might not show up as well on camera, but you can tell the difference in color between where this fabric has been covered up and where it's just been exposed to the elements. And this is the underside of the wing here, right? So it's not like this is sun damage or anything else like that. It is just, this is 40-year-old fabric. It's 40-year-old paint. This has been completely covered. This hasn't, and you can tell the difference. And, you know, I'll come over here to the airplane. You can see it here too, where the wings attach, right? So here's the difference between the uncovered fabric and what it looked like, you know, or at least close to what it looked like brand new. It's old, right? And the funny thing is, I always get comments on how good my Cub looked, right? When I take it to air shows and stuff, people are like, man, that's a good looking Cub. Well, it's because Cubs are good looking airplanes, right? If you actually look at the paint, you can see there's stains, right? There's blemishes. Again, the fabric is solid, the paint is solid, but me as the owner, I see all this stuff, right? And so I am excited to recover the airplane and clean up a lot of that stuff and get it actually looking super clean and nice the way I think it should look. And again, that was always the plan. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last video or not, but the plan was always to restore this airplane soon. When I bought it, my plan was, hey, I am going to be tearing the fabric off. I'm going to be redoing this relatively soon. It just might be coming a little bit sooner than I had planned, and that's okay. So yeah, so we'll see. But there's still, and this is the other thing, you know, again, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what I've mentioned or not, so I might edit this out, but I am thinking about just repairing and restoring the wings right now and leaving the fuselage be. But I think this is evidence that if I do that, the plane's going to look funky. The plane is going to look funky. The wings are going to be nice and shiny and new. The fuselage is going to be this. But the plan won't be to fly it like that forever. That'll just be a temporary couple-year thing until I decide to tear into the fuselage, if that's the route I decide to go. Even if I do just do the wings right now, there are a lot of repairs I'm going to do to the fuselage. There's a lot of things I'm going to get into while the airplane is down anyway. But that is my overarching thought. But again, here is where we sit for right now. More to follow.